Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nel Zabi, and I'm one of the organizers of the Black Writers Guild. I'm not going to say much. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming this evening. It's a delight to have you all here with us. Derek Bardowell and Michael, of course, Michael Holding, or Uncle Michael Holding, as we must refer to him with his proper respect and moniker or so, are going to take this evening forward. We're going to have a great discussion. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to enjoy ourselves, and we're going to ask as many questions as possible. Just want to say one final time, thank you very much for coming along. Please get involved. Please get engaged. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know everything else. So just one housekeeping tip. This is not a creative writing class or session or so. So as much as you want to know about how Michael came up with the precise sentences and structures and paragraphs, so this is not the place for that. This is a very much about the story and the actual journey and everything else that Michael actually has to share with us too, and Derek too. Michael will be leaving us at 5:45. Unfortunately, we've not got 6:45. Unfortunately, we're not going for the whole hour because this time is of course expensive, as the time of all legends are. And but hopefully we'll be able to continue the conversation to cover some of what's been going on over the last couple of days, of course, with Euros and everything else and the outcome from that. With that said, thanks once again, and I'm going to pass you over to Derek Bardowell. Thanks so much, Derek.
Thanks, Nels. And Michael, before we start, I'm just going to mention a few things and a few reasons why we call you Uncle Michael. So we could mention the 249 test wickets and the fact that you're one of the greatest fast bowlers of all time. And also the author of this wonderful book that you can see here, Why We Kneel and How We Rise. But there are a few things that really struck me about your career as an athlete, a commentator, and an activist. So first, you've been responsible for some of the most iconic moments in cricket history, from the greatest over to Geoffrey Boycott 40 years ago, to the colonization and blackwash of the English cricket team in 1984, punctuated by those sixes that you hit off Bob Willis, the late Bob Willis. The nickname, the coolest nickname in cricket history, Whispering Death. Your refusal to go to the rebel tours of South Africa in the early 80s. And of course, your speech last year on the 8th of July, which very much articulated the thoughts and feelings of Black people across the globe after the Black Lives Matter protests. And you have also been, for close to 45 years, a continual presence in our lives. There have not been many public figures, Black public figures, particularly in sport, that have been had such a high public profile and a continuous presence and been a continuous force in our lives for 45 years. So Uncle Michael, welcome.
Thank you very much, Derek.
Thank you. I want to go back to the 8th of July last year. Now, Sky TV had already shown the video from you and Ebony Rainford Brent speaking about Black Lives Matter and your experiences of racism. They asked you to speak about racism again live on air. It was raw, it was controlled. How did that moment, again, where you articulated so many of the thoughts and feelings of Black people at that time and at that moment, lead to this book, Why We Kneel and How We Rise?
Well, Derek, again, thank you very much for having me. And I just want to say hello to all the participants in the background. Of course, I can't see them. It led to the book because of the positive feedback that I got, that speech, and also after I appeared on news next day, because it wasn't until I appeared on Sky News I started getting feedback on my phone from contacts all over the world after July 8th. But the next days when people like Thierry Henry got in touch, Naomi Osaka got in touch and saying, again, at that point, there was no thought of a book. Just people getting in touch to say, Thierry Henry is saying he felt my pain, Naomi Osaka saying that she could identify with my situation, with my parents, because her parents, of course, one Japanese, one Black Haitian. And of course, it just kept on coming. More and more people started messaging. One Afrikaans gentleman I know very well in South Africa messaged me to say, Mikey, I heard you. I am glad you said what you said because it needed to be said. And it just kept on coming, Derek. And my ghostwriter had been prompting me before to write another book. And I kept on saying no. And then Ian Ward, co-commentator at Sky, came to me again the next day and said, Mikey, what next? And I said, Ward, nothing. I've said what I have to say. But, people said to me, you can't just let it stay there. You have to continue. You have to say more. You have to do more. And so that's how the book came about. And then, of course, I started trying to find people to contribute to the book.
Now, in the book, you mix your own personal narrative with history, and of course, stories from Naomi Osaka, Usain Bolt, Thierry Henry. The book travels from France to Japan, from Australia to South Africa. In capturing these experiences from different people of color, sports people and their experiences, did anything surprise you? Was there anything that surprised you when you spoke to everyone?
Nothing at all, Derek. All those experiences that those people have been through, I have basically been through them myself, or seen it, or been close to seeing people experiencing it. The presence of those people was because I wanted people to recognize the fact that irrespective of the country you live in, irrespective of your background, irrespective of your fame, irrespective of how rich you are, you still are influenced by the color of your skin. You still get affected by the color of your skin. You still get victimized because of the color of your skin. My book is something I want to use to teach. I want to educate with my book. But I wanted those people involved because, as I said, I want people to recognize that any and everyone, once you have a black skin, you're affected by this thing. And what I'm hoping to do, Derek, I just said, it goes into history. I'm hoping to convince people to go and do their own research, even if they do not believe what they read in the book. Go and do your own research and recognize that a lot of things that we have been taught in the past were false. Recognize that we have been brainwashed. And when I say we, I'm not just talking about people of color, because you have white people around the world into certain things that are false. So I want everyone to recognize brainwashing that has taken place over centuries, and to do their own research and find out the true meaning of mind, the true history of mankind, so that we can understand that we are just people.
And Michael, very much it is a Black history lesson. This isn't a book that's just about racism in sport. It is a Black history lesson. What prompted you to go so deep with a fair portion of the book, really breaking down the history of resilience, innovation, the uprisings and achievements of Black people historically?
Because life is about having role models, Derek. Life is about having people that you aspire to be like, and also for you to think that person can do something, that means I can do it. And I don't know about other people, but I know my upbringing. I'm 67 years old now. I went to school way back in the 60s and 70s. I don't know if some of the curriculums have changed. I doubt it. But when I went to school, and even when I went to university afterwards, I didn't hear anything positive and progressive about Black people and people of color. All you heard about was slavery. So I had to go back in the history to find these great Black people and people of color, to show people that slavery is not just about history. We have produced great people, men and women, great people who have produced great innovations and discovered great things. And that's why I got that big long list of achievements by Black people and people of color, to list them so that people can understand that our history is not just transported in the bottom of slave ships. We have produced great people, and we can aspire to be great as those people.
Thank you, Michael. Could everyone mute their Zoom, please? Because we're just getting some feedback from someone's sound. Thank you. Michael, I also want to touch upon Ebony Rainford Brent, who was the first Black female cricketer to play for England. And she too recorded a Black Lives Matter message. What did you learn from her and her experiences? Because of course she, you know, experienced the torrent of abuse while she was playing, but also there was a fear of backlash for her coming off the back of the video. You know, so I just really want to touch upon what you learned from her and her experiences, and how some of the reaction to her as a woman would have been different to some of the responses to you.
Yeah, well, what I learned, Derek, of Ebony Rainford Bread is that she was a strong woman. I could not have gone through what she went through and gotten to the heights that she got to. I did a chapter on her. And when I did the chapter and sent it to her, as I did with everyone, every chapter that I wrote about anyone or involving anyone, I sent it to them for them to be happy with it before I could go to print. And she read it again and she said, Mikey, I'm sorry. I know I wanted to, and I told you I would be involved in this book, but I cannot relive this. I cannot have this in black and white for people to be reading, and then people will come back and ask me questions, because we left out a lot of names that she spoke about, and we didn't intend to put people's names in it. But she said people are going to want to ask her, so who is this person that you're referring to? And she didn't want to leave that again. So I had to leave her chapter out of the book. But Derek, it is unbelievable what she went through. And when she tells you that she had to go and see a psychologist and it affected her mentally, you can understand. And you can also understand why Naomi Osaka is having mental problems right now. She's under mental stress because of things happening in her life at such a tender age. But believe me, she had willpower, she had strength, she had character. And at that age, I'm an older man now, I can control myself now. At that age that she went through that, I don't think I could have. As a young fiery fast bowler, as people know, I misbehaved a couple of times on the cricket field. I don't think I could have controlled myself at her age.
It was interesting in the book, you said that, you know, when you were touring as a youngster and experiencing racism in different countries, the one thing that you, among the many things that you had, but the thing was for you that you could just go home. So once it would happen in you know, Australia or in England, you were able to compartmentalize it and then go back home. Were you aware when you first toured England in '76, and of course when the late Tony Greig, South African, who was captain in England, said that he was going to make the West Indies grovel, and of course the West Indian team absolutely crushed England that summer. How aware were you of the impact that you were having and the West Indian team was having on all Black people in England at that particular time, and of course historically?
1976, I wasn't fully aware, Derek. I was aware to a certain degree because one of the games that I played at the Oval, a practice game, people wanted us to win that game. I didn't quite understand why they wanted us to win a little practice game, but then Greenwich told me why it was. But at the same time, coming to England in 1976, my very first time to England, I didn't know a lot of people in the country. So my entire tour was spent amongst the team, traveling on the bus from venue to venue, going to test matches, going to county games. I wasn't really involved in the society per se. When I came back to England in the 80s and visited more regularly, and I got to meet a lot of West Indians and go to their homes and travel with them on the road, that's when I got to really understand more what it meant. But I just want to go back to the Tony Greig situation. When Tony Greig said that, the entire team was up in arms because he was a South African who basically was just playing for England because he couldn't play for South Africa at that time, using that particular word grovel, which had racist connotations. And we just thought, no, South African under the apartheid regime that's going on now should be saying that sort of thing. But later on, I found out that it was just ignorance from Greggy. Greggy was not a racist. Greggy was just ignorant about the connotation behind that particular word because of his background. And I got to know him very well, not just myself. Lots of members of the team got to know him very well. And we went to his house in Australia when he was living down there and that sort of thing. And he became a good friend. But at that time, having not met the man, didn't know anything about the man, and to hear that comment Nah, we we had to make sure that he regretted it.
Now, that West Indian team was very much like how we used to watch Muhammad Ali when he boxed. It was the pride of the nation. It was pride globally. And very much that team was the team of independence. Very much you guys grew up in independent Jamaica, independent
Yeah.
Barbados, and so your approach to the game was very different. And very different to previous generations of West Indian players who were slightly more compliant due to the time and circumstances. You guys went out very differently. And for 20 or so years created what is arguably the greatest sports team in the history of sports. You guys went unbeaten from 1980 to 1995 in Test cricket. I think only lost once between 76 and 95. And you were World Cup winners in 75 and 79. It was an incredible achievement. But in the middle of that, there was the South Africa tour. And you guys were dominating, you're at your apex, and then this offer came for the West Indian team to tour South Africa, a tour that you refused to go to and showed great activism yourself and Viv Richards and others. Can you tell me your reasons why you refused to go to South Africa? And what was the impact in your activism doing that, in terms of how did you maintain your excellence on the field of play as well as your activism off it?
It was a very simple thing for me not to go to South Africa. People keep on saying, how difficult it was and the amount of money being offered, how you could turn down that amount of money. Number one, the money did not mean anything to me. There's no amount of money that they could have offered me to go to South Africa. And simply because I knew enough. I didn't know everything about South Africa, but I knew enough about the country to say to myself, there is no way I can submit to them to talk about going to that country, to endorse what they are doing down there, to accept honorary white status. There's absolutely no way. You see, my mother suffered from racism. I didn't know as a young man, but later on in life, I got to learn. And I got to understand that she knew a lot about South Africa. And I heard just whisperings in the house, whisperings, not much talk, but outside of my house, I had friends, I had senior people who knew what was going on down there, and we spoke. And there's absolutely no way, Derek, I could have gone. I divorced that quickly. That did not affect my career whatsoever. That did not affect when I went back out onto the field to play for the West Indies. As you know, as everyone knows, we beat everyone. And people were saying, oh, we were more vicious against England. I don't think so. We just wanted to beat everybody. It didn't matter if you were a white, brown, pink, or green. We wanted to show the world that we were the best team, and we were vicious against any and everybody. We played against India, and there was complaints about the amount of bouncers we bowled against them. India, they're not white guys. So, it's not a matter that we're victimizing white people or trying to hurt white people. We played against everybody the same way. But that South Africa thing wasn't difficult for me. It was very, very easy. And as time has gone on, I have recognized how much of an impact that had on people of color and also people in South Africa, because the last 7 years I've been going down there to work for SuperSport. And every year I go down there, I meet more and more people, not just black people, I meet even white people who are telling me, oh, Mikey, I'm so glad you didn't come on the Rebel Tour. So I know that I made the right decision in every respect.
Now, with the West Indian team, the revolution was televised very much. But of course, people tried to combat your dominance as a team. And here were just some of the phrases that were used to describe the West Indies at the height of their powers. You were described as 7-foot monsters, devilish looking, violence, brutalizing, thuggery. Which is the type of language that you would be criticized for if it was said on Twitter. This was being said a lot of the time by the canon of English cricket writers, and their comments about you. And then through various policies and overrates, the reduction of foreign players. You had the media, you had the Rebel Tour. What was it like dealing with some hostility on the pitch, but also having to deal with hostility off the pitch? You know, because very much a lot of the English players that went on those Rebel South African tours ended up in very high positions of power and authority once they came back and were not punished or penalized in terms of their career prospects. So how have you been able to deal with that? Because of course, you've had this public profile that's not just been on the field of play, but also off the field of play.
Well, first thing, Derek, I never experienced any sort of racism on any cricket field anywhere in the world, apart from people shouting from the stands. I did not play against one cricketer that I could say passed a dirty remark or made any sort of racist remark or even a comment that had racist connotations, apart from what Tony Gregg said with his ignorance. So on the field, I had no problem whatsoever. Off the field, as you said earlier on, I could compartmentalize things. Remember, I did not play county cricket until 1985. I was almost at the end of my career, so I was not living amongst it. If I came to England, I came on a tour, I played my cricket, I went back home. And that was always my security blanket. At the end of August or early September, I'm going back home. I don't have to live with it. If I go to Australia, same thing. But I enjoyed my cricket, and I can tell you, I met the more good than bad people. And that is what you have to take into consideration. You have to say to yourself, man, I have met a lot of great people, English people, Australian people, whatever. The fools that I come across every now and again, I can just dismiss them because, as I said, I'm going home. I'm not amongst them. So I might, beg your pardon, I might encounter them a few times, but I don't have to live it. So that wasn't a problem for me either. And all I had to do was just enjoy the company of the good people that I met, enjoy the company of my teammates, the great team that I played with, enjoy the fact that we were winning. So there were a lot of positives that kept me going.
And Michael, what would you say has been, or has there been any impact of you being so vocal over the last year? So post July the 8th and the book coming out, what has been the impact on you personally and professionally in the last 12 months?
No negative impact, Derek, I will tell you that. I have had so much positive feedback since July 8th last year. And even recently, I was sitting here at home as I am now. They sent a camera from Good Morning Britain, and I was appearing on the program, and I spoke my mind just as I have been doing wherever I've been asked. And by the time the program ended, I heard the letterbox in the door opening and something dropping through the letterbox. By the time I could get up from the program, I went on to the door and there was an envelope with a card and a note inside of that envelope. And this is a neighbor that I never met. I think the card might still be somewhere here. Let me see if I can, yes. It's still here, beg your pardon. I'll read the card. Dear Michael, just saw your interview on GMB. So very passionate and empowered, very eloquently said. It has certainly opened our eyes. Thank you very much. And it's signed by a husband and wife. And it puts the address, number, I won't say the number either. And these are people that I had never met. And they came, they listened to the program, they saw me on the program, and they thought they needed to drop me this card. So I know a lot of people are understanding what I'm talking about and understanding what we are trying to do.
And Michael, in terms of the last 12 months, in terms of what you've seen, have you seen progress or what have you seen that's changed? Because obviously after the Euro finals, we had all of the racism that was that Marcus Rashford and Jadon Sancho and Bukayo Saka were subjected to, and various other things that have suggested that progress has been slightly performative and less really progressive. How have you viewed the last 12 months in terms of progression?
I think there has been a lot of progress, Derek. You know, the people that came out with those racist comments after the Euros final, I still think that they are in the minority. And I believe that just like crime, you'll never get rid of racism. But the more you can push those morons into the background and let them become more and more insignificant, the better off we will be. I keep on hearing people talking about lack of progress. The thing is, something that has been going on for centuries is not going to end overnight. There has been progress. Progress is slow. I have some friends here in England that every now and again I have to be reminding them what used to take place. A friend of mine sent me a message today telling me that in 1980, he tried to do this with a library and I tried to do this with a cricket team, and all he got was people fighting back and he couldn't make any progress. And I said to him, yes, but what is happening now? Whenever somebody does something racist now, or does anything that people think is racist, it gets called out. Years ago, no, it just was swept under the carpet. You're a troublemaker or you're an angry black man, and they just moved on. People are taking notice now. So people may say there's no progress, but they do not remember where we are coming from. And in my book, I encountered that same thing and addressed it with Adam Goods, who is the indigenous Australian who retired from playing AFL in Australia in his 20s because of racism. And he was complaining that there is no progress. And his elders had to say to him, Adam, think about where we are coming from. It wasn't until the 1960s that indigenous Australians were considered people. They were not counted amongst the census in Australia. They were considered flora and fauna. Now they own businesses. Now they can go to university. Now the government has mandated that a certain amount of procurement of goods and services have to go to Aboriginal or indigenous companies. So people will say there's no progress. There is progress, but it's slow. But it will come. As I said on Sky last year, I don't expect to see equality. I can't live that long. But I am seeing progress, I'm seeing movement. And I see it even more in America. I see huge corporations in America putting millions and billions of dollars towards trying to level the playing field because they recognize that the playing field was not level for people of color. And they are trying and make that playing field level now. So there is progress.
Michael, how do you feel, what do you feel is the role of sport in all of this?
I don't see a serious role for sport. Derek, it's a society that needs fixing. People keep on focusing on sport. You know, look at football, look at what's happening in football, look at what is happening in cricket. Each sport needs to look at themselves to make sure that they are all encompassing, that everyone can look at their sport and think, yes, I would like to be a part of that. But at the same time, let us take, for instance, South Africa and apartheid, Derek. If during apartheid, they had opened up sport and said, everyone can play. It doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. We all can play together. But when the game ends, you cannot go to the same restaurant. You can't drink from the same fountain. You can't go walk on, you can't take the same train. How does that help anybody? Sport is fine to try and make sure everybody's happy within the sport and everybody wants to be involved and think that they can be involved. But unless the society is fixed, we are going nowhere.
Michael, I want to finish up by reflecting on something that's written on the back of the book. And it says about the book, it's the history of why we kneel and the hope of how we rise. What makes you hopeful?
What makes me hopeful is the changes that I'm seeing. And these changes started from way back last year when we had the demonstrations. If you remember, well, I don't know the age of people listening to this, but Martin Luther King in the 60s and the demonstrations then, 99% of the people on the streets were Black. Last year, you could count up to 45, maybe 50% of the people demonstrating being white. I saw a Swedish ladies football team, all white, playing against another white team. And they took the knee before the game started. A Swedish women's football team. In the 60s, that would not have happened. I saw a friend of mine, a Scottish friend of mine, sent me a picture of an under-19 Scottish team dressed in green and blue. I don't know which team it is. We were dressed in green and blue, obviously playing a limited overs game. And before the game started, they took a knee. Not one black member on that team. And they took a knee. That would not have happened, not forget 1960s, that would not have happened in 2010. So I am hopeful because I see progress. I see people recognizing that things are wrong and not just people like us. As Thierry Henry said, he sees people outside of his community now recognizing that his community is hurting and want to do something about it.
Michael, I think one of the most powerful things in the book, it was just 2 words, and I think it was Thierry Henry when he contacted you, and he said, "I understand." And I think that rings true of what you've said to us this evening, and I think it rings true to a lot of our experiences. I just want to read, before we come to some questions from people who are viewing this, I just want to come to a couple of messages in the chat. One says, "I was there at the Oval with my dad and my sisters, and it was awesome. One of the best experiences of my life. Thank you." Also underneath that, in capital letters, "the best team ever." And another message here. And I was glad you said that in the book as well, because that team does not get as much credit as it should get. And also another message here: "the team gave us so much hope as a Black family." So thank you, Uncle Michael. Nels, I'm bringing you back in here to see whether the 2 of us can just facilitate any questions from people that are listening.
I am back, Derek. I don't know if I appear on the screen or not, but I'm back.
I'm hearing you, Nels.
Excellent. Are there any questions from anybody? Feel free to jump out and just ask. Unmute yourself or request to do so.
Hi, I'll ask if that's okay. Thank you so much for that. And I'll say you've been so inspiring about my family's childhood, my childhood, my family as well. It's been amazing watching you're playing and what you do in the public eye. I just wondered, do you think that what do you think that we could do, those of us who have a little bit of a platform, who can draw more, and aren't in sport, who can draw more attention to what's going on within and without sport? I mean, you know, I write anti-racist books, I try, but is there anything that you see from your experience in sport and beyond that we could be doing now, especially in the light of what happened in the past 48 hours?
Well, Rachel, right?
Yes, Rachel.
The only thing I think anyone can do, Rachel, is just keep on highlighting whatever problems there are. Don't let the focus fade. You know, when people start talking about, oh, taking the knee doesn't mean anything anymore, I don't agree with that at all. If you stop taking the knee, that means you have given up. That means you don't want the focus to be on you or what you are trying to do. Whatever you can do to keep the focus on the problems and on the injustice, just keep on doing it. You know, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to say what I said because I'm a cricket commentator. I can't bring that up in a cricket broadcast, but Sky gave me that opportunity. Sky gave me the platform to do it. If there's any way you can get a platform to do whatever you think is necessary, and again, the right way, just to show injustice, so that people can say, oh, they have a chip on their shoulder, or this is an angry person, or just to make people understand. And I think more and more people are understanding what's going on and more accepting of what is wrong, or accepting that things are wrong.
Thank you very much. I'm starting on book 3. Thank you so much for the inspiration.
Okay, Rachel, no problem.
Thanks, Rachel. Alex Mackenzie, would you like to come up? You dropped a question inside the comments. I'm happy to ask it, but if you'd like to take it forward, I'm happy for you to pop up. Just unmute yourself. Okay, I've been asked to ask. So, Uncle Michael, so Alex Mackenzie has asked the following question. And it's a rather interesting one. Do you think that a Jamaican upbringing helps in resisting racism in Europe and elsewhere? Your mum, by the way, was my headmistress, and we learned to be strong from her.
I definitely know that. I don't only think that, I know that, because as I said, I didn't live it on a day-to-day basis. So it's a lot easier for you to deal with something when you're not living it on a day-to-day basis, where it's not constantly beating down on your head. And Alex, I know my mother was very strong. She suffered from racism. Her own family stopped talking to her because she married a black man. And I did not know that as a young man growing up, because she hid that away. It was never, ever discussed in the family. Never, ever. When I mentioned it on Sky, my sisters messaged me immediately. How did you know about that? Because they didn't even know. My sisters now are 80 and 78. I am 67. They didn't know that I knew that, but I didn't discover that until much later in life, when my mother started to drop hints, and then I started to think, yeah, how come I've never seen your auntie or your uncle? That is when I started to think about things like that. And that's when I recognized what was going on. So I know she was strong, and that helped me growing up in Jamaica and not experiencing it every day, not having this thing beating down on me and trying to prevent me from achieving. Growing up in a white-dominated country is a lot harder.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Uncle Michael, I beg your pardon. So Michelle Moore has a question. Michelle, would you like to pop up?
Thank you. Hi, Uncle Michael. It's a real honour to ask you a question. It's been fascinating to hear such a brilliant interview, and to Derek as well. I just want to ask you about that whole kind of tension between calling out injustice and playing as an athlete, as a former athlete, and as somebody who kind of coaches and talks and counsels athletes. There's always this kind of tension for them in calling out some of the injustice that they experience, and then putting in jeopardy their careers, whether or not they get picked for the team. And it's a real kind of tension as to when they do it, how they do it, and so it doesn't kind of negatively impact them for now. And, you know, in the future, because we know racism is patient, right? So even if they don't think it's going to impact upon them now, it may do so in the future for them. So I'm just really interested in your perspective around that, Uncle.
Michelle, to be honest, I think the atmosphere has changed. I think it is a lot easier now for anyone to talk about that, to start a conversation about injustice in sport or in anywhere, in a workplace, anywhere. I think over the last 18 months, as we have seen, more and more people are coming out and talking about it because they realize that the atmosphere has changed. I just read an article, as a matter of fact, of a young man in a bank writing an article about over 100 employees of color that he had interviewed, and writing about their experiences. And the person who wrote the article said, if this had happened 5 years ago, he would have lost his job. But instead, with the atmosphere as it is now, the bank itself is investigating what is actually taking place and looking to make change. So that tells me the atmosphere has changed. Colin Kaepernick lost his job when he took a knee, because again, that was before the atmosphere is as it is now. When the atmosphere changed, 3 NFL teams were thinking about signing Colin Kaepernick back in the NFL, because they recognized that what they had done, not that they recognized was wrong, because a lot of people know a lot of things that they are doing is wrong, but they want to be joining their fellow man and the people like them. They don't want to be outcast from those people. But now they realize that they can speak up. Michael Johnson said it. He said it to me, Mikey, I've always been an activist, but it is difficult on your own. It is hard. And he is an idol in the United States of America. But the atmosphere, I am totally convinced, has changed. I was watching Sky Sports News today, and they had on some people there talking that I know under normal circumstances, it would not have blown up as much. Sky or no Sky, although Sky are very active in supporting BLM, it would not have been blown up as much, and it would not have had the focus that it has now. So I would tell people, do not be afraid. In this atmosphere, I think things are changing, and if we can't do it now, we will never be able to do it. We have to speak up and let people recognize the injustices. And I'm sure if you do it the right way, that people will understand, people will listen. And I can tell you another experience I had. I know somebody who works in a bank here in the United Kingdom. Again, I ain't calling names or any bank, who told me that some person that was head of diversity in that bank was approached about a position in the bank, and the person wanted to give another white person the job. And somebody said, but you haven't interviewed this other person. And he was insistent, no, I have found somebody. And they said, no, you are the head of diversity, and this is the way you are behaving. Interview that other person. They interviewed the other person, and the other person got the job. So the climate is changing, the atmosphere is changing, and people must not be afraid to speak up. Just do it the right way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Sandra, you had your hand up. Would you like to come forward?
Yes, thank you. Michael, just like to say, I was that young girl who went with, to the Oval with my dad and my sisters and was there on that momentous day when Tony Gregg crawled, and it was just awesome. And you gave our family so much enjoyment. My mother, she was an ardent cricket fan. She tells, I won't go too much to go into now, but just like to thank you and Clive and all that team for so many wonderful memories. Thank you. I'd just like to say your book is fantastic. Sorry.
No, sorry, you go ahead.
The book is fantastic. It's just mind-blowing. It tells a story that is hidden, you know, because people keep their stories hidden. I don't know if anybody's seen John Barnes today. He's just he's just gone, wow, you know, and he predicted what was going to happen if black players missed penalties in Newsnight. Unbelievable. But I'd just like to say, I think you need to write a children's book, because the children, cliche, are the future. And there's a lot, I mean, here we all are as black writers. There's a lot of mileage in black children's literature, and there's a dearth. There's not enough of children's literature out there that tells stories with black heroes, with black anything, and a story about a black cricketer. I mean, there's lots about black footballers, but a black cricketer. Hint, hint, hint. Michael, please grab your ghostwriter if you need to, and write that book. A book like this, the one you've written, a fiction book, but it's needed to do. And we need those people like yourself who will lead the way. And we've got writers here who, loads of writers in this forum here. But I really think a children's book and a young people's book would be marvelous, because we've got to see role models. We've got to. Growing up, I grew up here in London, and the book I read was Little Black Sambo, which I know some of us might know. Horrendous book, horrendous. And but that, you know, there weren't many, and we need books. We need books, and we need voices like you. And long may you keep those dulcet tones, doing whatever you do. And I'd like to say, just, I can't believe I'm talking to you like this. Oh, I'm so honored. And my sister, who's not here now, Brenda, she...
What is more important than me writing a book?
What is that?
What is more important is the government recognizing that we need to change the curriculum in the school.
Yeah, please, that we're banging on. Don't worry, a lot of us is doing that, is struggling with that at the moment. And we've got that in hand, and it will be done. It will be done. It will. Oh gosh.
When the Prime Minister is talking about you can't go back and edit history.
Exactly.
History has already been edited.
It's because they're too ashamed of the history. But we won't, this is not the forum, but they're too ashamed of it. That's why. Anyway.
Quickly, before you go, Michael, we've got one more question from Anne.
Hi, first of all, I agree with you around school. I grew up in Canada and we had Bungo the Negrito boy and Sambo. It was just horrendous. Did you end up self-publishing like a lot of Jamaican writers have had to do? Or were you able to go to a literary agent and get a book deal?
Well, I went to a literary agent because I didn't know, as you know, I'm not a writer. You know, I'm a cricket broadcaster And so my ghostwriter, who knew this literary agent, he went to her and said, listen, we're going to do this book. We need some help. We needed to find a publisher for us. We need to negotiate the contract
So
with them.
it was your ghostwriter's agent?
She is not his agent. He knows her because he does his own stuff. He writes articles for newspaper and that sort of a thing. Ed Hawkins.
Because it's really hard for Jamaican writers to get literary agents and traditional book deals. It's really tough. A lot of people end up self-publishing.
So Anne, sorry, I'll just jump in there. Anne, we are going to run a session with literary agents for Black writers pretty soon. So the Black writer that's coming soon. So hold tight. We will hold you down. Don't worry about it. We've got it coming soon.
Okay.
So I think we've got about 1 minute of Michael's time left. And I just
Congratulations on the success of your book.
Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you.
So I'll probably just ask a question myself because we've got about 1 minute of your time left, Michael, and I'll just be selfish and just ask a question myself. I don't know if you can see me or not. I'm not on the spotlight.
It's okay, I can hear you.
Okay, I just want to ask, if you were to leave with one message for Black people in Britain today, knowing everything that you know, you're a man who's walked the entire globe. You've been everywhere over decades now. You've been a Black man. Your image of us, your image has helped promote our image, helped promote our race. So we're grateful to you. But what would you say to us if you could just leave us with one message today? What would that be to us?
There is hope. As I said in the book, we have a chance. I see things are changing. It might not be as rapid as some people would like, but things are changing and there is a chance, and we should never allow ourselves to give up. And we should never allow circumstances and what we perceive as people being against us to prevent us from achieving, because you can always circumvent those people or those systems that are trying to keep you back. And as I said, with the atmosphere changing, those systems are wilting.
Thank you.
And on that note, Michael, thank you. Buy the book, it's here. As I said, it's not just about sport, it's history, it's personal experiences, and it's deeply honest and also inspiring and incredibly hopeful. So Michael, just from us and the Black Writers Guild, we just want to say thank you, Uncle Mike, and thank you for spending the evening with us.
My pleasure, and get people to get themselves educated about the real history, not what was brainwashed by others.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. All the best and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Derek, I don't know if you wish to continue to lead the conversation because this is much more your area than it is mine. But just wanted to continue the conversation about what we experienced over the last, and thank you, Derek, for chairing that. It was absolutely amazing.
Well
If we put our cameras on, that would be good. We're going to have an open discussion now. But Derek, I don't know if you wish to lead over what's happened over the last 48 hours and what we could make of it and how to proceed and everything else. So what you expect to, and maybe open the conversation up from there.
So first, just sending strength and hope and just peaceful vibes to everyone, because I know that what's happened over the last couple of days would probably been incredibly triggering, even though we could have predicted it. I find it quite interesting that I think TikTok were one of the sponsors of the Euros and couldn't have predicted and didn't actually predict everything that had happened afterwards, as well as the newspapers and politicians that are coming out at this moment who spend most of their time stoking most of this and suddenly making these statements. So, you know, I guess at this point, I'm just going to open the floor up just for any thoughts or reflections about what's next, particularly us as a community of writers, in terms of a response to what happened over the weekend with our footballers.
Well, I'll go first. I'm a retired hockey